Why should we suppose, she says, that merely having human DNA warrants giving zygotes a right to life? And she is basically saying that just because you're human doesn't mean, okay, you're human, you have human DNA, you have human genes. Her reply is, so what? That doesn't mean anything. That's just an example of speciesism, favoring your own status over other species. And she also thinks it's a circular argument when you say humans have value because of the kind of thing they are, not some function they perform. We'll come back to that in a bit, but then she presents what she thinks is her most persuasive argument to show that merely having human DNA doesn't warrant personhood. And she says, imagine a transgenic spectrum. And here's what she says. Imagine we had an ape where one by one we replaced each of its genes and replaced the ape genes with human DNA and human genes. At some point, the chimp would have more human DNA and more human genes than chimp DNA and chimp genes. At what point would we say we've suddenly no longer got a chimp and now we have a human? And our answer is, well, we wouldn't think that ape was suddenly a human being simply because we replaced its genes. Therefore, merely having human DNA or human genes does not make you special in a philosophical sense. Now, on that note, let's think about that last point for a moment. Suppose we did change somehow a chimp into a human being. Well, that would require a substantial change of nature. The chimp would have to stop being something else and start being a human being. It would have to stop being a monkey or an ape and start being a human being. And merely changing physical parts doesn't do that. And I think here she misconstrues the pro-life argument. We are not arguing that humans have value strictly because they have human DNA. That is a characteristic of their existence. But here's the real point we're arguing. Humans have value and a right to life because they possess a particular nature. That is a rational nature that, as Christians, we know bears the image of God. The chimp does not have that rational nature. In fact, if you think about the difference between an amoeba and an embryo, you come to some real clear distinctions that I think we need to keep in mind. The amoeba will never be self-aware. Why? Because it's not in its nature to be self-aware. It will never be a rational being because it's not in its nature to be self-aware. But the embryo, it is in its nature to be self-aware, to be a rational being. The amoeba is not rational because of its nature, because of the kind of thing it is. The embryo, the human embryo, is rational by nature, needing only time and age to become a rational being. The first has a lack of rationality because of the kind of thing it is. The second isn't rational right at the moment simply because it's young. And that distinction is something that I think Greasley overlooks.